Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with special guest person, Sören, who you may recall from prior videos. We are here together in Milano, at least for the next day or two. And we wanted to have a conversation that let's put it this way. We were sitting here in our lovely hotel room watching masterclasses, right?
Sure.
Yes, masterclasses. And one of the ones we saw was Christa Ludwig with a hapless soprano singing Mahler's Wo die schönen Trompeten blasen. And it was a very interesting masterclass. You can see it on YouTube. And one of the things that occurred to us in watching this that we thought we would chat about was the idea of how musical details breathe life into an interpretation or a performance, and how artists have to learn which details matter and which details don't matter. Because, of course, there is this sort of micromanagey kind of detail, which can actually, harm an interpretation. And then there's the kind of details that make the piece, in other words. And in this particular case, there was a song. It's a detail. It's a major detail. We're not talking about things that are necessarily unimportant. It was a song that had three characters. Yes, we have the girl. Three voices.
Yeah.
There's the girl. There's her boyfriend, and there's a narrator. And it's much like Schubert's Erlkönig, actually. Right?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've
Didn't
got...
say, but...
No, because you have a narrator and you have the Erlkönig. Well, you have four characters there. Because you have a narrator, the Erlkönig, the child, and the father. And so in some of these songs, you have an opportunity to really characterize and tell a story. And it was remarkable how simple that idea is, because it springs directly from the text. But some of these younger artists, particularly, of course, they need to learn, and we don't expect them to know everything. But there are just some obvious points, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not so easy. I mean, it's not so easy for you or for us as listeners to see what's there. We just take it for granted. If someone is singing that and he uses different kind of voices for the parts, you think it's obvious. Yes, he has to do this. You don't even think about it. But as an interpreter, you have to realize what is it, what is in the piece. Mm-hmm. And it's not so easy because you're struggling with all kinds of technical stuff. And I mean, if you're playing piano, oh God, how can I do this? And if you sing, how's my voice sounding, and blah blah blah, and so the details are very often the number of details which you saw and integrate in the complete piece are very, very important. And I think probably I'm a fan of details, but probably one doesn't think so much about it.
Well, and part of it also was something you mentioned, which is that as listeners, we should know what some of these details are. I mean, when you listen to a song like that, I know it's in German if you're an English speaker, but the truth is you have to look at the text. You have to look at what it says, and it's reasonable to have expectations that the performer has looked at the text and knows what it says and will realize what's that. We should demand that. We should demand that of these performers. I mean, Christa Ludwig was very clear about that.
It just enriches your perception. It makes you feel better if you understand what's going on. I think if you have the beginning of, or what did you say, the trauma march in the first symphony, Mahler?
Oh no, the funeral march. Yeah, one of the things that's so interesting as an orchestral performer when you do Mahler is that Mahler doesn't use general dynamics. General dynamics is not just a corporation that makes things like submarine and weaponry. I mean, general dynamics means that the composer simply writes forte and everybody plays forte. If you look at Honegger's score, he has a section, he writes dynamique générale because he uses general dynamics. Everybody plays at the same volume. But with Mahler, no. Each part has its own dynamics. And in the funeral march, some of the crazy, oompa band klezmer music bits, the different parts are all marked. Everything, someone's playing forte while someone else is playing piano, and you have the strings bowing, col legno with the back of their bows, and it's marked like fortissimo, which is they don't want to do because it wrecks their bow, and it's screechy, and that's the whole idea. And when you have people sitting in the orchestra together, and someone's playing loud, the next person's playing soft, one of them is going to assume that it's wrong because they expect that they should all be doing the same thing. And one of the things, we had to do when we had conductors, he would say to the orchestra, folks, play the dynamics in front of you. Do not assume that because someone else is loud and you're soft that it's incorrect. You have to really follow what these details are in order to realize the composer's intention. And sometimes it takes a great deal of work.
Yeah. Or the example which Bernstein gave in his masterclass, that Sibelius always uses basses, not just the basses, the double basses.
The double basses.
Different from cellos and violas. They have their own voices, and they have to be heard. If not, too bad for the conductor in this case.
Yeah, I mean,
for us.
The music, you miss out on the music. The Sibelius example was wonderful too, because it's a masterclass where Bernstein is telling a young conductor how to conduct the first movement of Sibelius's Fifth, and he can't explain it, so he just sort of knocks the kid over and does the whole thing himself. He just takes over the whole thing. But the reason is because, and this is often the case in performances of Sibelius's Fifth Symphony, the entire quick section from the big climax after that slow first, what was the original first movement, and Sibelius, put them together to make one giant movement. He joined the first movement to what was then a scherzo. That scherzo is one slow acceleration from the beginning to the end, and it has to be absolutely imperceptible, and it has to gradually get fast. And by the time you get to the end, to the coda, where it's marked like prestissimo or presto, very quick, you're not supposed to know how you got there. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it arrives, and you're at this incredibly quick tempo, and it's very hard to do it by tiny little gradations. In fact, Bernstein blows it completely in his remake with the Vienna Philharmonic. He doesn't do it at all.
But there, in this video, he didn't. And this is marvelous to watch how he does it effortlessly, and at the same time talks to the guy, and the orchestra does what he wants. It's just the small gestures. It's unbelievable. I mean, and I think that's just worth realizing.
Well, and he's explaining it along the way. He says, see, it's getting faster, but you don't notice it's getting faster. It's a little fun.
And he does some magic with his hands.
Yeah, of course. But when you listen to recordings of Sibelius's Fifth, if you look at a score and you see what he says, which and Bernstein says is one of the most difficult passages in all of the classical repertoire to do correctly or to do effectively, because you have to manage this constant increase in speed, and it's one of those details that so many conductors get wrong.
Yeah, I mean, probably all of us know the musical joke by Mozart. Know, which is actually a wonderful joke.
Yeah,
I mean, you may hear that something is wrong with it, but if you know why, because if you know how it differs from the right way to do it, the correct way to do it, then it's just you have more fun with it.
Well,
that's about details.
The musical joke has, the thing about the musical joke is that you can listen to it sort of on the surface and just for like wrong notes, the horns with the wrong notes and dissonance and all the craziness, and it's very, very funny. But there's so much more that goes wrong than that there's the fugato that goes nowhere. It's ja da 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 da. The other part comes in cadences that don't go anything. Phrasing that's completely screwed up. I mean, it's endless. How bad, how greatly awful the writing really is. And the more you listen to music, the more you listen to great music by composers who do these things right, the funnier the musical joke becomes, because you start to hear all the things that are just They just don't sound right. I mean, there's voice leading on the wrong parts and entries that are. It's hilarious. It's wonderful.
Or I mean, like the beginning of Beethoven's First Symphony. Was it Beethoven? Which just starts
Plonk.
which was unheard of until this point. I mean, if you heard a lot of symphonies before that, except Haydn maybe,
Yeah, exactly. Always except Haydn.
then you would realize how daring this was, what Beethoven did with this beginning, which is a detail, yes, a detail, but a very telling one.
Well, there are a lot of things. We've talked about, when I talk about the Eroica, the beginning of the coda of the Eroica, where the horn comes in with, the opening theme over still the dominant, the dominant seventh chord, whatever it is. It's the wrong harmony underneath. And that was considered shocking in Beethoven's day. And today, we don't hear it. We don't hear it. There's nothing shocking about it. There's nothing especially dissonant about it. It's very quiet. It's impossible to recapture for modern listeners the shock value that something like that may have had.
In certain ways had, I'm sure.
Well,
but maybe the reaction of the public was not like.
I don't think the public caught it. I've always said, in that particular case, that's an interesting case actually, because theorists or people who talk about that moment in the Eroica, usually we're not talking about it based on experience of the thing in performance, because the opportunity to hear that symphony frequently in the early decades of the 19th century you didn't hear it very often. It wasn't played very often. But what people knew were piano reductions from playing it at home. And if you're playing it at home and you see there's this chord and you have the note and you're playing them at the same volume with two hands, yes, it's a shocking thing, because the volume of tone is on the same plane on a piano. But if you do it in an orchestra where you just have this very soft string tremolo, then the horn comes in, it's a totally different timbre from a totally different world. I think the effect, it's much more poetical, first of all, but the effect is entirely different. It's not there to shock. It's there for you to see. You see the home key arriving on the horizon with the horn in the distance, and then ta-da, the orchestra bursts in. And it's a dramatic effect, but it's not a shock effect in terms of, that sort of, harmonic thing. But that's the way I think people were listening to this.
Beethoven did a lot of these surprising things.
Oh, yeah.
Like this, what is it, third piano concerto, where the slow movement, just the piano, orchestra piano.
Oh, no, it's the fourth, right?
Fourth, yeah.
Yeah, with the strings, and it's the piano versus the orchestra. Orpheus taming the Furies, or whatever they call it, the Furies taming the beasts, or the beasts and the Furies taming. Someone's taming something.
That goes away from details, but.
But how you play it matters. I mean, a lot of period instrument people nowadays just make mincemeat of that movement, because it has, it's the strings are either too few, or they're too jerky, or they're and the piano sounds like a.
Also, what Christa Ludwig said to this singer was, "Well, now just sing.
Yeah.
Don't think too much about it. Just let it flow."
Yeah, that's what she said. She said, you have a voice. Use it. She said, people are paying to hear your voice. Use it. Give it.
Yeah, which is no detail, but it's hard to do as well. It's, I don't know, as hard to do. Just let it come, let it go. Just give what you have without restraint.
Well, that's the flip side of what we were talking about, which is micromanaging. People overthink things. They think, I have to do something with every single word. But at the same time that you think of the minutiae, of the notes of a phrase, there's the whole phrase. You have to think in terms of sentences, in terms of paragraphs.
It's then the integration of all the details, let's say.
Yeah.
That's what we get from great performances or from great performers. And I just thought we just think that you should also know about it, or think about it,
Well,
or check about it?
Well, one of the conductors who was really fabulous at big picture versus details was Fort Wangler, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Fort Wangler was horrifying when it came to details, and really didn't care particularly about small points of ensemble and whatnot. If he felt the entire paragraph, the big picture, was shaped correctly, that's what he was after, and he was marvelous some of the time when he got it right, but he was very well, let's just say it all depended on the day whether he was able to actually realize it. But what people admire in him is that quality. And quite frankly, I think a lot of his more rabid fans are kind of delusional because they put in to the music what isn't there, what they think he's doing, rather than what's really happening.
It easily becomes ideological. It's just you hear what you want to hear, and that's true for all of this. That's why details are so important. It's anti-ideological. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, well, one of the experiences I had, and I was talking to Sören about this earlier, and I may have mentioned it on this channel too, was it concerned Chopin's Fourth Ballade. We were watching a masterclass with Murray Pariah doing the Fourth Ballade, which is a very, very tricky piece, of course, and because it's performed by everybody and has such a long history of piano pedagogy behind it. You could spend your life working on that one piece, But I had a friend who was a pianist, and she asked me to listen to her perform the Fourth Ballade, and I said, "Sure, let's do it. It's fun." So I sat there with the score while she played it. She played it very beautifully. She's very gifted. But afterwards, I said to her, "Play it. I would like to hear it." I said, "Exactly the way it's written on the page. Interpret nothing. Just you have an text or whatever it is. Just sit and play it exactly as it's written on the page. No rubato, no nothing. Keep the tempo straight, the rhythm's absolutely accurate, the note values exactly what Chopin wrote. See what it sounds like." And she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it at all.
Who can do that?
Probably nobody.
You always add something, or
Sure.
you're supposed to think you're supposed to add something, and sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes you just have to let the music speak.
But the essence of the interpretation should be built up from what the composer actually wrote. Yeah. Even though I mean, let's face it, a score, just the notes on the page, in and of itself, is not enough. It's seldom enough. To even Stravinsky, who said you don't have to do anything, just play what I wrote. It's never enough. You always have to bring something of yourself, and you always have to interpret what it means. It's impossible to play without interpretation, but it's also a very, very good idea to know what the composer actually wrote, and to know what it would sound like, almost without human intervention. In a way, because then everything that you add, has specific meaning, on top of that basic substratum, of notes, which is the essence of the piece. And it was a very interesting exercise for me, and she was very kind to let me sort of torture her that way. But I think it was good for her too, because you learn things about a piece of music by just looking and asking what is it? What is there? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, sometimes composers get it wrong. They're not practical, or they don't. It's not that they're always right. It's just that you have to know. Make decisions, interpretive decisions from knowledge. Even
as a non-performer, it enhances your enjoyment.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Your enjoyment.
Yeah.
But of course, with us, as listeners, most of us, and I don't want to get this, is you don't need to go buy scores and sit there. We gather our information through listening. And by listening to different interpretations and different versions of pieces, we come up with our own idealized, at least I do, sense of what should this thing sound like.
But there are so many obstacles on the way to that. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I heard things. I mean, it was so much burned into my mind that even 20 or 30 years, whenever somebody did it differently, I just said, that's very strange, you know. And then at some point I realized, well, what I had heard as a child was wrong. There's not whatever forte, but it's piano and so on. And then I had to, adjust here to something which is correct.
You have to do some unlearning.
Unlearning, yes.
Unlearning. Yeah, a lot of it is.
Yeah. It's just what happens. That's what it is, you know. You get used to something. Or I remember this. There's one aria in the Troubadour. I think it's Azucena, and she's an alto.
Yeah.
And I had this Fedora Barbieri. Mm-hmm. Wow, that was such a great voice, and he did it marvelously. Never ever heard it like that, and always wanted to.
Was it Stride La Vampa?
I don't remember.
Stride La Vampa.
No, it was not that.
That's her first aria, you know.
However,
in the Hoffnung festivals. I'm a Chuchina who could be plainer.
Yeah. So.
Well, but she's crazy too. I mean, yes, crazy lady roles, as they say in opera, and she's a wonderful character because she's nuts, and that's what you want in opera. You want women, crazy women in extremis.
Yeah.
That's what we listen for, and to learn how to do the extremis extremely, you have to focus on some of these details while at the same time sounding natural. Sounding inevitable. It's a very difficult balancing act. It really is. But you get a lot. There's so many masterclasses on YouTube now that you can see. We'll wrap this up. I mean, it's going long, but we were watching Ivan Moravec with the Liszt Mephisto Waltz No. 1. I mean, and that was just hilarious because there was this poor kid who, and Moravec, most of the time in piano masterclasses, you have two pianos, and the pianist is sitting next to the person with his own piano or her own piano so they can demonstrate what they want to do. But Moravec is sitting in the audience, and he's got his score, and he's sort of shouting at the kid, do it again. And it was what was amazing to hear Moravec talk about it was how he was going to help the artist put more music in the piece. Is the way he described it. Because of course the Mephisto Waltz No. 1 is this virtuoso firework piece, and they're enormously gifted young artists who can toss the thing off like it's nothing. They just pound their way through it. And he was focusing on all the quiet, soft moments, on all of the inner melodies, on all the lower harmonies and things, saying, listen, look at that, listen to that. I want to hear this note. I want to hear that note.
Actually,
it's marvelous.
Being so gifted and just playing real difficult pieces like they were nothing, it's getting a new way in making music.
Yeah, well, that was his point.
Yeah, I understand. But you can see that also, people like, Liszt was romantic, and there's some Schumann and all these, which are not easy to play. But people just play it like it just goes off. There's no obstacle. There's nothing which makes them think about it. They just play it.
That's right.
And
sometimes
that sometimes just makes it not possible that we listen to it as music.
Well, part of the problem is that some of these pieces are supposed to be difficult. They're not supposed to sound easy. They're supposed to be effort. And part of virtuoso ought to be, even though you may play it effortlessly, if the music is about effort, about struggle, about, or negative emotions sometimes, you have to be able to project that, irrespective of the fact that it may not be technically difficult for you. It's not about technique. It's about expressing what the music wants to say, and making the technique subservient to what the message of the music is. That's something we all are listening for, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that was that was good.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for for
Nothing
submitting to another one of these ordeals. Some of us find public speaking a little easier than others.
Thank you. Yes,
but you're very good at it, and I appreciate it very much. So
it's okay.
Thank you. Until next time.
Good night.
Wherever in the world we happen to be, in the same place at the same time. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for joining us. Take care.